Matt Shakman, it was a real trial by fire for you because your first ever episode directing Game of Thrones, and you've got one of the most ambitious battle scenes in the show's history. Like, just what was the first thing that went through your mind when you were starting to think through, I'm going to have to direct this?
It was equal parts terror and excitement. You know, they make you sign all these NDAs before you get your script, and then they deliver the scripts to you. And you know, of course, it's like Christmas morning, so I'm reading through, and I get to the loot train battle, and I'm flipping page after page after page, and it's still going on and still going on and still going on. And I began to realize, you know, the task that was ahead of me, but also the opportunity. And so, you know, as a director, you live for the opportunity to work on that level and that scale, but also you're bringing this big action sequence to life that has all these wonderful characters that you've loved for years kind of coming together for the first time. So, you know, it's unusual in that it's not just about Transformers tearing up a city, but it's got real heart and emotion at the center of it.
What do you think, as director, was the most important choice you made for that episode?
I think it had a lot of different perspectives. It had Tyrion sort of as someone whose love was torn between Daenerys and Jaime, watching this battle happen between two people that he loved, and it had Daenerys' point of view from in the sky as she attacked the Lannisters. But I chose to focus on Jaime's point of view and the point of view really of the men down on the ground, because we'd seen Daenerys torch the slavers in the end of season 6, and we'd been with her in these heroic moments when she was using her dragons to liberate people. And now I felt like, oh, this is the first time we're going to have a chance to see what it's like to be on the other side of a dragon attack, and to realize how horrific it really is, and to see what war is like when it changes forever, when a new weapon is introduced. So, you know, here you have this Lannister line that's kind of Roman in their order, and they're ready to take on kind of any you know battle, and they kind of line up. They're organized, and then first comes the Dothraki, which is very sort of asymmetrical in their attack, and it's wild and brutal. It's sort of cowboys and Indians, and so that's terrifying to them on a certain level. And they realize this is going to be a battle unlike anything they've ever done, but they're ready to try and die trying. And then the dragon comes into it, and then all of a sudden everything changes forever, and it's no longer an orderly line of one side versus another. It's completely sort of asymmetrical. And I looked a lot at Apocalypse Now, where you see the helicopters attacking the village, and you're with Martin Sheen and Duvall up there in the helicopters, and you know the Wagner is playing, but then you're down on the ground with all these poor villagers as this fire and this napalm is sort of taking over. And I felt like that was sort of the perfect touchstone of what it would be like to be down below. So that's how I sort of, I guess the biggest directing decision was point of view, and picking that side to focus on.
And you got sort of poor Bronn and Jamie, sort of Wile E. Coyote style, trying to load the big crossbow to try to fight this just epic destruction that's raining down on them, which is pretty cool. Now, you also set a record for this episode of setting the most people on fire ever for film. What was it like dealing with that?
Yeah, we certainly didn't set out to break a record. It just sort of happened as we went, because one of the early decisions that I made is that we wanted to make it as real as possible. A battle like that, especially when you have a big visual effects dragon involved, you know, it quickly can become something that feels unreal. And I wanted it to always feel incredibly visceral. So people on fire, there's nothing more visceral than that. And it's also one of the most dangerous stunts that you can do. So it takes a lot of time. It takes an amazing stunt coordinator like Rowley Earlham, who does Game of Thrones, and his entire team, who are all top notch and amazing and brave. And I don't know how they do what they do. But it takes a long time. You know, they're coated in layers and layers of cooling gel and fire suits. And then they wear this sort of silicone protective mask that is all copied from the same face mold. So you have 20 guys who all look vaguely like Vin Diesel, ready to be lit on fire. And then you have 15 seconds when the fire goes before you need to rush in there and put them out and jam a breathing tube in there, because they have to hold their breath the entire time so they don't breathe in the flames. I mean, it's high stakes. You have to make sure that you're extremely accurate in your planning. You know exactly what you want out of that shot. Oftentimes, it involves many cameras. We had, I think, 8 or 10 going at the most. And you just have to be really careful because you have people's lives in your hands. And luckily, no one was hurt, even though we did, I think, 20 at one time and 73 in the sequence in total. So there's a lot of fire, a lot of fire.
Yeah. You've got and you had people standing on the back of horses and all sorts of other things going on, and no big injuries from all of that.
No injuries at all. I think maybe some crew members got some bruises from moving set pieces, but that was it. It was remarkable. But you have to be, thinking ahead of everything. You have to take your time, and you have actors on horseback next to wagons that are on fire, and you've got all of these stunt people riding through on their horses and hand-to-hand combat. It really was kind of a perfect storm where, in terms of danger. But the horse people were fantastic. Camilla, who was in charge, she's the horse master, is unbelievable. And Rowley, the stunt coordinator, and everybody, the first AD, Charlie, we all just took our time and made sure that no one got hurt. But at the same time, you want it to be the most epic, amazing thing. So you shoot for the moon, and then you just make sure you can do it and make sure everybody's safe.
Yeah, and I guess it's probably when the stakes are that high and the danger level is so extreme, you do make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. I imagine you probably have more injuries happening when it's a more simple thing where people don't think they need to be as careful.
It's absolutely true. Yeah, when you're doing something big like a fire stunt or a horse stunt or a fire plus horse at the same time just slows down, and everything is so locked down. But you're right; it's those simple fist fights or something that feels like you do it every day. That's where things can happen.
Yeah. Now, what was it like coming in? It's such a well-established show, Game of Thrones. It's almost like also just the fandom and everything. It's bigger than the show itself in some ways. Right. What's it like coming in to direct your first episode of the series as it's sort of winding up in many ways, and as these characters that have been apart for so long are coming together?
I'm a huge fan of the show, so I've been watching it since the beginning. It was a huge honor to be asked to come and join it and to be given such a big episode to do. Everybody there couldn't have been more welcoming, from the other directors who I learned a lot by chatting with, who had all been there before, to, of course, David and Dan, the showrunners and the creators of the show, who are the loveliest, smartest, kind of most supportive people that I've had a chance to work with in my career. And, they trust the people that work with them, from the directors on down to the various heads of department, their producers, their special effects people, their stunts people, the visual effects. And so it's a tremendously collaborative, supportive environment. And yes, it's been around for many years, but the great thing about the show is it's always pushing its limits. It's always trying to top itself. It's doing things it's never done before. So you show up and it's not like the previous season at all. And all of a sudden it's like, how do we do a giant dragon battle at the same time as a giant Dothraki battle at the same time? How do we do these things? They've never done them before. So it's like taking Battle of the Bastards on the ground, adding crazy Dothraki to it, and then adding the dragon on top of that. So the great thing about that is you never feel like, oh, you're working on a courtroom or a medical show and you're like, okay, it's another surgery. Oh, it's another trial. We know where the cameras go. Let's do it. It's a whole new challenge, and everybody gets excited about that and wants to outdo what they've done before. And they're really happy. And when I started on the show, I talked to David Nutter, who's a terrific director. He's done a lot of work on Thrones. He directed The Red Wedding, among many other famous episodes. And I asked David for his advice. And he basically said, you're about to get the keys to the best Ferrari you'll ever drive. And all they want you to do is put the pedal to the metal. And I took that to heart, and I tried to dream as big as I could, and the support is there. You dream as big as you can because they want you to, and they want to try to pull it off, because it's a show that is unlike any other show that has been on TV or probably ever will be.
Yeah. What do you think was the biggest thing you learnt from working on Game of Thrones?
I certainly think that, I've done some action things before, but nothing of this scale. But certainly if you don't have a point of view, if you don't have an emotional core to your action, it doesn't work. And I realized quickly as I was starting to put that sequence together that I had to think about it like a little mini movie with a beginning, middle, and end, the moment where all is lost, and sort of structure it with that kind of architecture, and to always keep every moment of it rooted on the human. Because without that emotional center, it just falls flat. Action just for action's sake is not good. So that was one of the biggest things that I learned for sure.
Mm. And just sort of approaching a series that deals with so much sort of political intrigue and alliances and backstabbing and all that sort of the big sort of things like that. How much did directing Charles D. Macdennis Game of Games for Game of Thrones prepare you? Game of Games help you for Game of Thrones?
Oh God, that is so funny. You know, who knows? I think that the secret to every great television show is that if you're doing comedy, you have to be looking for the dramatic stakes in it. And if you're doing a drama, you have to be looking for that lighter touch. I think Thrones is really good at that. They find those unexpected moments of comedy. And I think, you know, when we're doing Sunny, even though it is the silliest show in the world, especially an episode like Charlie McDennis, which is just our core group of lunatics in a bar playing a competitive game, that as long as you treat the stakes, you know, as if it's Game of Thrones, then it can work and the comedy really works. So I think I probably did learn a lot from that. You know, those guys, you know, gave me a break on Thrones in part because of my work on Sunny, which is a strange thing. But especially an episode called Charlie Work that they liked a lot, which was all one shot, sort of in the style of Birdman. And so, yeah, so I guess, you know, whatever I've learned from doing Sunny applied in some way.
That's good. Obviously, it's very easy for a big battle scene like the loot train to sort of overwhelm an episode, especially like from the perspective of a director, I imagine, because there are so many moving parts, big elements. But what's another scene or moment that from the episode you directed, or from either of the two episodes you directed, that was a particularly challenging scene to have to approach?
I loved both episodes that I got to work on, but episode 4 in particular has a balance that I really love, in that it has many reunions between the Stark children, between Jon and Theon, and others, and some of those reunions don't go the way you would expect. This idea that as the Stark children come back to Winterfell, that they can never really go home again because the home they're going to is completely different, and the person that they are now is so different from who they were when they left. And it's great. I loved setting up the tension between Arya and Sansa, between, you know, Sansa and Arya realizing what Bran has become. All of that was a lot of fun. Seeing Bran go up against Littlefinger is one of my favorite scenes, where Bran brings back a line, you know, chaos is a ladder. That's something Littlefinger said many seasons ago. And I got a chance to shoot that, stealing from one of my favorite filmmakers, Jonathan Demme, who from like Silence of the Lambs, where he goes right up wide and close, and the actors look right into the lens. And it's just that moment where Bran lifts his head up and says that line. Littlefinger looks up, and for just those moments, you cut to these close-ups, and you see them sort of staring into each other's soul and realizing what's to come. Like, that was one of my favorite scenes to do. But I think probably second to the loot train, I have to point to the Brienne and Arya training match in the episode, which is a simple sparring match, but it has great significance. And it also, much like the loot train, needed an architecture and point of view, because you're with Brienne as she realizes who she's fighting, that the person that she thinks she's battling is not the little Arya from before, but suddenly she's up against this incredibly well-trained, skilled fighter. So it's about her point of view down in the fight, and then it's about Sansa being like, who the fuck is my sister, right? And seeing her realize that it's not, again, that you can't go home again. So that shift in perspective between what's happening up top, as Littlefinger also realizes that Bran is a formidable person, and now Arya is a formidable person, and he is off his game as well, trying to figure out how he's going to navigate this new world.
Yeah. Who's your favorite character in Game of Thrones?
I love so many characters, but I would probably pick Arya, just because she's, scrappy and fun and smart and the ultimate survivor.
Yeah. Are you directing? Can you tell us if you're directing any more episodes of the series?
Yeah, no, I'm not. Season 8 is about to wrap up. I unfortunately, wasn't able to join them this year. They spent the better part of a year working, and I'm really excited for what they create. It's going to be a really epic season to come.
Yeah, and how obviously you will not tell us, but do you know how it all ends or not?
Bits and pieces for sure. Yeah, I would say that I know a lot of the bits and pieces, but not all of it. But it's going to be a great year.
when you came on to direct and you had the 2 episodes back to back, which is sort of something that they've done a bit on Game of Thrones, particularly the past couple of seasons on the show. How long does it take you to put those episodes together?
It's a really unusual system. Most television, a director begins, they prep their entire episode, and then they shoot their entire episode, and then the next director comes in to shoot right after them. Game of Thrones has developed a system that's unique and also really effective, where all the directors start their prep at the exact same time. So we all began in July. We did all of our scouting and early prepping at the same time, and then you begin shooting at the same time. So you'll have multiple units. So as a director, you can be shooting an entire week, or you can only be shooting a couple of days that week. But there's no end of work to be done. You're always prepping. You're always at the editing room. You're always working with VFX to kind of previs and imagine what's coming up next. And there's endless meetings. So it's a great way to kind of have this constant rolling prep. So with a big battle like the Loot Train that I knew was coming up at the end of my shooting, I had an entire basically 4 or 5 months to prepare to shoot that, which you can't do if you're just prepping for 10 days and then shooting for 15 days. You kind of have to need a lot more lead time than that. And it's also good because you're in multiple countries and you have a big cast and everybody's kind of moving around like a big chess game. So it's a good system in a way to have the big scope of the show and to be all over Europe. And the only way to do that is to have all your directors kind of on hand.
Yeah. What in years' time, when you think back to your contribution to Game of Thrones, which will have an important and big role in sort of TV history, what will you remember? What's the thing you will most sort of like fondly remember from your contribution?
Just a chance to play in that sandbox with those characters, the mythology, what those guys built, starting with Martin's books and then what they've created over the last 7 or 8 years. It's extraordinary. And I'm a bit of a geek and I love that stuff, and the chance to be on set with the Night King, or, even though it's a tennis ball up in the sky, knowing that you're basically shooting Drogon flying past and making everybody react the way they should to that happening. All of that is incredibly exciting. And, it's lovely to work on something that so many people like and love and feel passionately about. There's a lot of television on the air right now, and it's hard to keep up with everything. So it's rare that there's one sort of show that everybody seems to want to watch when it's on for the first time, and to feel that there's that kind of energy around something that you've had a hand in creating is really special. And so I'll probably remember that.
Yeah, the thing I love about Game of Thrones is that you do have the weekly episodes. So you do have like a week to talk with your friends about what you think's going to happen next week, which is sort of in the age of binge watching being lost a little bit.
It really is. I wonder, it's sort of the last water cooler show, and I think that is one of the great things that's inspiring to the fandom, is that they can rally around, discuss, and percolate on something and build anticipation for what's going to come. Because the show also has such a great history of surprising its audience. From when they killed Ned Stark in season 1 to the Red Wedding, you never know what to expect from this show, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, and even with like battles and trial of combats and things like that, it's always like a sport where you can sort of go, oh, do you see the big battle last night and who came out on top? Do you see all this and stuff? It's sort of like really fun for fans to talk about. Yeah. Definitely. And I'm not sure if I watch a bit of the show. Like, I'm a big fan of the show Survivor, and I feel like it's the drama series version of Survivor as well, which is another show that you sort of watch and then you talk with your friends the next day about who got voted out and who made the big moves and things like that. Yeah,
I don't think that you've had to eat any bugs yet on Game of Thrones, but it could be coming up in season 8.
Yeah, you never know. It's pretty tough what those guys on Survivor have to deal with. Maybe
worse.
Yeah. So anyway, Matt, it's been such a pleasure to talk about The Spoils of War, which you are on the Emmy ballot for Best Director at the moment. So people can vote for you right now in that category. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, just so great to talk with you about all of the stuff.
Oh, likewise, and thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. And are you still directing on Sunny?
Not this year, but hopefully next year, which we think will be our last year. So I will come back for our final year.
Okay, so hopefully we can talk about It's Always Sunny for the final season then. That'll be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.